It's election, okay? Now, not every state is the same, but in Texas, we elect every judicial position except for city judges. So for those of you that get to vote in November, you're going to have county judges, state district court, state court of appeals, Texas Supreme Court, and Texas Court of Criminal Appeals. That's why our ballots are so long. And I mean, that's daunting, to be honest with you, because it's hard to know, because you're voting. There's a Republican or a Democrat after their name, but you're voting based on, like, you know, if you know something about those people or not. Not all states do it that way, but I want you to kind of think about that later when we talk about decision making. How you get your job probably impacts the way you make your decision. I mean, wouldn't that make sense? Okay, so what else did I want to say? Okay, over here. What created our federal court structure? Like, why do we have a Supreme Court? This is not a trick. Constitution, right? Okay, so it created this, but it did not create a circuit court, and it did not create district court. It only created a Supreme Court. Who had the power to create circuit courts and district courts? Congress. Good. So Congress has created these, and they continue to do so. Like, if we evolve, if we change, if we need a special court, they could come in and create a special court. Like, let's say there was a really bad tax problem. Then they could just create a special tax court. The original court structure that was created post the Constitution was done by the Judiciary Act of 1789. So real quickly, like 2 years after the Constitution was ratified, they made that. And you guys might remember when we talked about Marbury versus Madison and all those midnight judges and all that stuff at the start of the course. That's when all of that stuff was created. So we've had it pretty much the whole time. Okay. All right. One of the things that's kind of unique on this, if you look here, the Supreme Court, according to this diagram, has jurisdiction over federal law, but also state law. So if you have a problem with something that happened in state district court and you end up appealing, it is possible that the Supreme Court can make a decision about your case. The president can't do that. The president cannot use his powers in Texas. The Congress does not use their powers in Texas. But the Supreme Court, because they are interpreting the Constitution, which is the supreme law of the land, they do have jurisdiction over state law as well. That being said, they don't make a lot of decisions about things that are just Texas. You know, they usually are going to make decisions about things that have national application. But we tend to have a lot of things come out of Texas for some reason. Okay? All right. Any questions? All right, here's what we're going to do then. I'm going to give you some situations, and you guys need to look at your diagram, kind of think about it, and I want you to tell me which court would be hearing the case. Like, where in the process would it fall? This says, employees of Chester Carpet Company sued their employer for failing to make pension contributions as required by the Federal Employee Retirement Income Security Act. Don't shout it out. Look at your diagrams, give everybody a second to think about it, and tell me, and then I'll ask somebody to tell me which court this is. Megan, what do you think?
U.S. District.
Do we all agree? Because she's so smart. Look at that. Yeah! Okay. If I were ever to give you a question like that, I would never make it hard for you to figure out if it was federal or state. Usually there'll be something like that. If it's federal, it'll talk about the post office or taxes or something that you know is like a federal thing. Okay. All right, here's our next one. Bob was arrested for aggravated robbery. He was tried and convicted in a state district court, but appealed his case based upon a question of the validity of the eyewitness accounts. What do you think, Aaliyah? Okay. All right, so tell me where you think. Okay, so it says he was tried and convicted in a state district court. So you see that? Okay. So if he's going to appeal, where does the arrow go? Up. So there you go. State Court of Appeals. That's it. Okay, trust yourself. I forgot to tell you earlier on your diagram how you have two high courts. The reason is the Texas Supreme Court handles civil lawsuits, like civil situations, and the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals handles criminal law. So one isn't superior to the other. It's just because we're so big, we have two high courts. Not all states do that. So, Urte, do you know the difference in civil and criminal?
Not really. I guess.
Well, try. What do you think?
I'm guessing criminal has to do with like criminal acts, whereas civil has to do with like house problems or like I don't know, some like disputes over land or stuff like that versus
Yeah.
just law-breaking things.
I would think of civil disputes, like civil as being disputes between people or like groups. Criminal is a problem with the government. So like the government is accusing you, they're saying you can't do this, and they're accusing you and saying you could have done it. I mean, you could still have a civil suit with the government, but that's like with their enforcement of a policy or something like that. So people would bring a civil suit, whereas the government would always initially bring a criminal lawsuit.
That has a lot to do with, like, some people will say I'm not pressing charges for whatever reason, but then the police department will go ahead and press charges anyway.
Perfect. That's a great example because that's kind of a misnomer because people don't press charges.
Yeah,
the government does.
Yeah, it's just basically deciding. Sometimes the officer just decides if you want to do it.
Right. Well, because like if you say, look, I don't want you to press charges, then that means you might not cooperate and be a witness for the police officer, and it might just not be worth their time.
Like, we had these guys, there's some dudes driving around our neighborhood, got really drunk, so the cops tried to pull them over. Well, they took off on foot, and one of them ended up in our backyard hiding behind the bushes. And so
Nice.
they caught the other one and said, call your friend. And they could hear him talking in the backyard on his phone. So they asked my dad if he wanted charges pressed for trespassing, because that's all they could get him for. And he's like, no.
Yeah.
I mean, they're already getting a lot.
Yeah, I'm sure. All right, here's another one. Thomas was convicted in a federal district court for kidnapping a 23-year-old woman. He decided to appeal the court ruling. Michael, what do you think? Very good. So it's going to be the circuit court because that's going to be the first level of appeal. We all got that? Okay. And then we got one more. The governor of Tennessee is upset that Georgia won't return its land that it was incorrectly given when incorporated as a state in 1796. So Tennessee decides to sue Georgia. What do you think, Shakiria? It is the Supreme Court because a state sues a state. Yeah, very, very good. All right, if you guys will flip your papers over to the back of the first page, and I am going to ask Dolly to read question 1 for us, please.
How do federalism and jurisdiction affect the influence the court might have on public policy?
All right, so we got to think about federalism, which is that division into the dual system, and jurisdiction. Am I hearing in a case originally, or I'm hearing it based on an appeal? What area is it from? So it's the right to hear a case. So when a judge makes a decision, isn't that speaking for the government? They're establishing a policy. So you need to think about how the concepts of federalism and jurisdiction might get in the way of a judge impacting public policy in our country. Spend a little time thinking about that, and then we can go over this one.